It is September 25th, 6 p.m. We are here for the Common Council meeting on the second floor of City Hall. Agenda's been posted, media has been notified. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Tom Kelly, Stephen Jopek,
Here.
Eileen Daniel,
Here.
Carrie Michalowski,
Here.
Gerald Anderson,
Here.
Thomas Barnett,
Here.
Here.
David Holt,
Here.
Leanne Felton,
Here.
Chris Hannes.
Here. We do have quorum. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to number 4, which is public comment. I have Terry Thompson.
Excuse me. Yeah, got it. Thank you. Good evening. I am Terry Thompson. I live at 518 Wisconsin Avenue. Mrs. Shoppy could not make the meeting tonight, so I am speaking. We are asking for the city fee schedule for block parties to be eliminated. And here are our reasons. Number 1, we are taxpayers. Number 2, we are nonprofit. And number 3, we are not an organization. We are not selling anything. I would just like to add my own thoughts here too. I have lived in Rhinelander most of my entire life, and I remember a time when neighbors watched out for each other. They would stop by for a cup of coffee unannounced, and it was great. That doesn't happen anymore, it seems, and we have become so self-absorbed in our own lives that we forget about others around us. And our little once-a-year block party brings back those days of caring, sharing, and loving one another. And I don't feel, and my neighbors don't feel, that we should have a $100 fee attached to that. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. I have a Ben Meyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Ben Meyer, 1621 Balsam Street, and I'm a city resident just off West Hill Drive. I'm speaking with relation to agenda item 12G, which is the footpath or trail between West Hill Road, the dead end on West Hill, and the corner of Phillip and Lois Streets. Some of you are familiar with this. You've seen my face before, but for those of you for whom this is a new issue, I'll give you a little backstory and give you a little advocacy. The people on the far west side of town of Rhinelander, in the city of Rhinelander, are effectively isolated from the rest of our community right now. We do not have an option to bike or walk to the rest of our city without using Davenport Street. Davenport Street is the only option, and the west side of Davenport Street is windy, it is narrow, it has no sidewalk, it's busy with traffic, and tractor trailers are coming up and down that street regularly. So it's not an inviting place for a person like me with a 1-year-old who wants to have a stroller and go to the library or go to a park. A little bit of history. I raised a push for a potential sidewalk along this section of Davenport Street last year. As part of that, I knocked on every door in my neighborhood to gauge support. It was met with overwhelming support. I appeared before you here at council a couple of times. I also had a couple of meetings with the mayor and then City Administrator Vruwink and the city attorney. I thank them for their time for meeting with me. One of the things we found is the more feasible option to coming to a solution was the path or shortcut that it sounds like you're going to be discussing tonight. At the end of West Hill Road, is about a few hundred feet as the crow flies from the corner of Lois and Phillip Streets. Right now, there is a kind of an informal, overgrown footpath between those 2 points, and the proposal I'm putting before you, and I think you'll discuss tonight, is improving and connecting those 2 points with a more formal foot bike path, something like crushed limestone, and that would provide what people on that side of town are seeking, a way to get into town by foot or by bike. People, after traversing that little path, would be able to use Phillip Street to get into town. Phillip Street has part sidewalks, part no sidewalks, but even the parts that don't have a sidewalk are much wider and there's much less traffic. In other words, it's a much safer place to walk and bike. There's good news here. The city owns a strip of land from the 2 points that could be used to make a path like this. This conceivably could be done without any purchase or easement of land. On Monday, August 8th of last year, I met with the city administrator, Zach Ruwink at the time, the mayor, the city attorney, and we had a discussion with an agreement that the city would look to clear vegetation in that corridor, investigate and implement water flow solutions, and for the city to lay a gravel path between those 2 points. The mayor clarified to me in August of last year that a plan was to take those steps either last fall or this spring of 2023. As far as I can tell, there's been no progress yet. I'm not bitter about that. I'm continuing to advocate for this solution. I want to be clear that I'm aware there are a couple of potential hurdles here. First is that strip of land abuts what you could call a wetland area, and I'm no hydrologist, I'm no engineer, but it is a bit of a low-lying area. I understand if you want to construct a trail, you want to construct something that's durable. I can tell you that I walked that footpath today, being as rainy as it was, and my boots didn't go squish. There's no standing water there, certainly. But that might be something the city could investigate, a simple culvert or raising the grade a couple of inches there. I also understand there are a couple of concerns from property owners that live on the end of West Hill. I want to be sensitive to that. My understanding is there are 2 individuals that have some concerns. Their objections, as I understand it, are based on privacy and perceived property value. I want to point out that with regard to privacy, we're not asking for a major development here, certainly nothing commercial, not a road. With regard to property value, I would suggest that accessibility like this rarely hurts property values, and moreover, out of every door I knocked on, there's overwhelming support. I've got the petitions in this folder, and I'd be happy to show them to you. I had people sign. The folks that have reservations about a plan like this are in the deep minority, frankly. I'll leave you with this. I and the vast majority of our neighborhood are in favor of this solution. We're tired of being effectively isolated from the rest of our city as city residents. But it's beyond just us. This effort is enthusiastically supported by the Oneida County Biking and Walking Trails Council. In a broader sense, I hope you, as elected officials, want to make Rhinelander a better place to live, a place people want to live, especially for young families like my own. And if that's something you want, this is the kind of step you need to take. Cities that are accessible, walkable, bikeable are places that people want to live. So I understand this is on the agenda for discussion later. I know this is not the time for question and answers, but I will be here if I can answer any questions or provide more information when we get to that point. I'm happy to do it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Does any of the alders have any public comment? Okay. Moving on to number 5, mayor's comments. I do not have any at this time. Moving on to number 6, administration report. Refer to Mr. Patrick.
Nothing outside of what was submitted.
Any questions or discussion about his report? Not seeing. Number 7, public hearings. They do not apply for this meeting. Moving on to number 8A, streets and utility project update by Mark Barden of Town and Country.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to give a quick update on Oneida, Timber, and Phillip. As you can see, Oneida is still a slow slog out there. We had curb contractor coming in, starting on curb a couple weeks ago. They've since pulled off. They will be in this week, Wednesday. Flat work is still continuing. We're done on Oneida. There's a bit of curb to do on the top end of Oneida on Frederick. They have about 2 days worth of curb to do on all the outstanding streets. The hope is if they come in Wednesday, they'll have all the curb done this week. We've heard this in the past. I'm not holding my breath that they're going to be in Wednesday. But I'm generally an optimistic kind of guy, and I'm holding that optimism here. So I would anticipate the beginning of next week, we'll say the curb is in. Paving is scheduled to be started next week. Northeast Asphalt is going to stay until the paving is complete. Whatever's done, they're going to pave. So there is a possibility the end of next week we'll have all the curb and all the asphalt in on all the roads that are opened up. They will continue to work on flat work. They will generally get in about a block a day. There's 9 blocks to do. So we got about 10 days worth of flat work to get done, meaning sidewalks, concrete approaches. So I would anticipate end of October is still what we're shooting for to finalize everything that's opened up. That would be curb, paving, flat work, and restoration. Any questions on Oneida? Timber Drive, water main will be complete on Wednesday. Sanitary sewer was done last week. So this week, Wednesday, they'll be done with all the sewer and water utility. Storm sewer, they should be done by the end of the week. The bike path from Harvey to Woodland, that has been delayed because there's a couple poles out there. One is owned by Charter. I believe one of them came out. We have one more to pull out there. As soon as that's out, we can get the bike path paved in that stretch. The Musson has been working on road base course. They have subgrade cut up to Timber Drive. Chippewa's going to be in potentially this week or next to get the curb in, at least up to Timber Drive. They'll be building road up to the bypass into this week. As soon as they finish up the utilities, they'll finish up the removals and the road work up to the bypass. So there's a potential mid-October we could have everything wrapped up on timber. Any questions on timber? Phillip Street, the water main has been installed as far as they're going to go. There's a couple more brackets they have to put in on the west end. At this point, the water main is in. We're going to fill it and test it, get a safe sample on that water. Then they'll finish the last piece of pipe, get the fittings around the abutment, and we're looking at probably next week they're going to make that tie-in on the west side and then have the finish up the street restoration. So Phillip should be wrapped up next week. Any questions? Thank you.
Is that a hand icon mean anything? Oh. Okay. Moving on to 8B, which is S&P Global Rating Report. I defer to Wendy, our treasurer.
So with every borrowing that we do, we've had a history of borrowing like every other year. One of the parts of that is to go out to a rating agency and update the rating for the city. As far back as 2010, the city's rating has been an A+, and I'm happy to inform you that this year the rating has increased to a AA-. And what that means is if you look at this scale on the TV, we have bumped up from the upper medium grade into the high grade. And the higher the rating, that qualifies us for the lowest interest rates and fees when we issue new loans. So it's a big improvement for the city that I'm happy to share with you. A couple of things that they based their rating on is over the past 6 years, the reserves in the general fund have increased. Hasn't been like huge amounts, but it's a steady increase, and we have increased our fund reserves so that we're more in compliance with our policy. Our fund balance policy is hopeful that our balance is in between 15 and 25%. And about 6 years ago, I think we were right around like the 14, 15 percentile. And now I think, based on my memory of the last audit presentation, I think we're closer to that 20% range. So that was one of the factors that they looked at. They also look at the economy of Rhinelander, and they are cognizant that the city is the county seat, and during the daytime, the population doubles. We have more business come into our city. We are a hub. And they had increased the economic status from a weak rating to adequate. And that was partly due to some new larger retailers like Blaine's Farm and Fleet. I know L&M Supply have come into the area since 2021, and we have 2 hotel developments underway right now that added into the factors. And the other one is the conservative budgeting practice that we've kept, and I think that's important to reiterate right now since we are in the budget season. And I'm also thankful to all the departments on how well I'm able to work with them to try and honor the budget that is adopted by council every year. And just one thing that I wanted to mention is they also said that they could take a negative rating action if in future years, if we weren't as successful with our budgeting, if we started to dip into the fund balance, we could just as easily reduce the rating and kind of go backwards a little bit. And they said that our financial management practices are standard, and they do realize that the city could use some improvements with the capital improvement planning, but I shared with them a couple of meetings ago, council approved us seeking strategic planning help. So, does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to number 9, proclamations. This would be in your packet. It was brought to our attention that White Cane Safety Day. They are looking for a proclamation. Over the last couple of years, the city has done more to be more walkable and more encouraging to people that have sight issues. This is the truncated domes at our intersections, as well as when you push the safety walk at like our downtown, you hear noises now too to help with this. So one of the honors I have as mayor is to be able to proclaim certain days to people or organizations. So September 25th, 2023, I'm proclaiming as White Cane Safety Day in the city of Rhinelander. Okay, with that, moving on to number 10, ordinances. None apply for this meeting. Number 11, unfinished business, discuss and or action on the city fee, which would be page 24 in your packet. I refer to our city administrator.
Thank you, Mayor Hannes. So in your packet, you have a list. I've highlighted the ones I believe that you wanted to talk about. That's the city fee schedule. So the one that generally, in Austin, I'll defer to you as well if you have anything, Zanis, because Austin handles them as they come in. We generally have the issue is with the $100 application fee is normally one of the bigger ones. So staff will be happy to go any direction that council sees fit.
Mr. Barnett.
So I've been a big voice on the fee schedule for special events and such. I don't think that the $100 application fee per se is the biggest issue. The biggest issue is all of the little fees that add up to a large amount. I will say that I completely agree with a block party not costing $100. It's a block party. It's for friends and families to get together, and it's a positive thing in the community. I'm not saying waive the fees for every event that takes place. Obviously, there are numerous events that take place that actually make money on their events. They are not hurting as far as trying to make something positive in this community happen. The non-for-profits are the ones that are going to end up hurting a lot. I don't want to live in a city where we say, hey, remember the St. Patrick's Day parade we used to have? Hey, remember when NAF used to do those events, or the Harvest Hoedown for the food pantry used to happen? Because that's what the future looks like with these fee schedules. and this isn't something that's radical and change. This is something that was introduced last year. There was no fee schedule like this previous to that. So it's new, it doesn't work. I'd like to see the fee schedule to be eliminated for the non-for-profits and the 501c3s, and silly things like block party, $100. Come on.
Ms. Daniel?
I am also in favor of city events for sure. However, this $100 application fee is for those events that do make money. And as we've seen, we've had a number of nonprofits, small groups come in and ask us to waive the fees, and we've had no problem waiving those fees. I don't think we've imposed any fees on anyone who came in and asked us to waive them. And after speaking with, I believe it was Austin, the last time I was in here, he mentioned that there was quite a few events that have happened where they've paid the application fee, not a problem. And it does help with things like security, getting our streets people to drop off the barricades, even if they place them themselves. I mean, it is that kind of thing. It lets the city know the event's happening, number one, right? Maybe we don't know it's happening if they don't have to fill out an application and pay a fee and that sort of thing. So I don't want to see the application fee go away completely. I would like to see on here some kind of footnote, perhaps, that nonprofits, 501(c)(3)s are eligible to request a waiver of any and all city fees regarding special events. Something as simple as that. We've talked about this until the cows are now home and they've had their coffee and they're tucked into bed. So I just want to get this over and stop talking about it, because it's, I mean, we've made the decisions already, so.
Mr. Jopek?
Yeah, I think a lot of the conversation is revolving around the fee schedule and whether or not this is going to become a regular thing, something that we're encountering at every meeting where we have a nonprofit coming forward and requesting this waiver. And so I too I'm firmly in a position where I think like a small block party or something, I don't necessarily see the significance, or not the significance, but the necessity to charge them for that. At the same time, like the application fee, putting a waiver on, I think where we're at is with a waiver and with that like process of, if you're a nonprofit, you can apply for a waiver. We're going to run into a tedious, repetition. Now, am I okay with that? I personally am. I don't mind voting quickly and saying, hey, I approve of this waiver. I think Ms. Daniel has a point on that end. And so for me, I don't necessarily see where the fee schedule is an issue for those events where there's it's for profit, right? Or they're gaining out of it. However, on that end, I'm sure I'm on the record, and I've been in the newspaper for it, talking about like things like the fair and those kind of things, where I do think we need to look at the schedule and the fee schedule and make sure that we're not spending loads and loads of, and I don't want to say loads and loads, but thousands of dollars on covering events like that. And so I think in those cases, I'm not dying on a hill, I'm not saying anything like that, but just, I think it's just a tedious thing. I think we just have to take it piece by piece and make sure we're approving and denying requests wherever need be. I don't, as long as we're using city resources, we have to govern them appropriately. That's our job.
Mr. Holt?
Thank you. I don't disagree with anything that Eileen or Stephen has said. The one thing I would like to add about language, Ms. Daniel, suggested a footnote or some language that directed for nonprofits. If memory serves, that language was proposed as an addition to an ordinance. It was voted on and approved 7-1. That vote was vetoed came back to council and failed on a pretty slim line. So that's just to give a little bit of a background to that. I personally, I mean, I voted in favor of it. I was a little bit miffed that it was vetoed for being a 7-1 vote, but and I would be in favor of that again. I also think that it is a good idea for the council to reserve the right to make that decision, and it is not, I don't see as problematic to have those requests come before council. That's our job, and it doesn't hold up meetings very much. It doesn't cost too much time and effort, and it also does give some acknowledgement, as Ms. Daniel pointed out, that the events are occurring, and I think there's value in that as well.
I just got a question for Mr. Anderson. I see you have a hand signal up on your screen. I don't know if you're looking to get the floor.
Yeah. Yes, I'd like to. Can you hear me?
You kind of have a poor reception right now.
Can you hear me?
Sounds better now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Is there something muted on our end, maybe? No. Okay, with that, I'll go to Joe Peck.
With regard to the application fee, at what point in the process do they pay for it? So like figuratively, a block party submits the application. Is payment due upon receipt of the application, or is it due after application has been approved?
It'd be fair to Austin, our city clerk.
So when a application is given to us, we do ask for payment for that event. Now, if they do wish to have it waived, then we wait to leave it to council, and then once council decision. I would also add in the packet on page 32, both Mariah and I have amassed every event that has come into the city for 2023, and this is pretty clearly going to be through the rest of the year because, to my knowledge, there's no other events coming due. So you can see the top group of events; those are all ones that we have not waived, that did not submit an application. And then the group on the bottom are all events that have come before council and have been waived. And then that breaks down exactly how much the cost has been, how much has been waived, the estimated costs from Department of Public Works to set up those events and everything. So that gives council knowledge of kind of where we've been at with 2023.
Ms. Daniel?
Just one more quick thing. I think, too, going forward, if someone comes...
Mr. Anderson, your reception is kind of poor. We're only picking up one of every, 5 words. Ms. Daniel, if you want to continue.
Yeah, I can hear you all the time. I don't know what's the problem is.
If you're okay yielding back to...
I can yield back to Mr. Anderson, no problem.
Well, Mr. Anderson, you have the floor.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. I don't have a problem with
So all we heard is you don't have a problem.
that at first, but it seems to work very nicely. I would like to see the block party fee reduced. Can we reduce the block party fee to $25? I still think the city blocked off, and that's the process. Response from the staff as far as how to distinguish between some of these different things according to the lines that have been discussed so far. I think that the ones that make some money ought to plan to spend the money, and some of them might amount to be a pretty large amount, and we need to analyze that somewhat as we go along. I'm not opposed to three that are the largest expenditure of the city that are pretty important citywide events. Put those and just say that's what we're going to do.
Thank you, Ms. Daniel.
I'm done.
Yep. Ms. Daniel?
Thank you.
Are you done, Gerald? Okay. I was simply going to say...
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yes.
As we go forward, it might be a matter of simply, if someone comes and asks for a waiver, we can ask them, have you done this event in the past? Yes. Was your application fee waived in the past? Yes. Has the event changed? No. It's an automatic. I mean, if it's been waived in the past and then the event hasn't changed and nothing's going to change, it could be a very simple, we were waived last year, that's something we'll have on record. And perhaps at that point, it doesn't need to come to council, right? If it's been waived in the past, logic would dictate that it would be waived in the future. Just something to consider.
Austin, got a question for you. How much time do you spend roughly per application?
So depending on the event, the process kind of is as follows. Once we receive the application, we work with the applicant to make sure everything needs to be handed in. If they're closing down streets, we have the streets that they want closed, the maps and everything. Once we receive that, we send it out to a list that goes to all the relevant department heads. Then they have to get back to the clerk's office and let us know if there's going to be any issues with the events. We've had instances in the past where we've had to add some kind of back and forth with them to sometimes change up their events, change up their routes if it was a certain kind of event. But it really ranges on the type of event, and if it's an event that's been held previously in the city and there's not much of a change, say like the 4th of July parade, then we all pretty well know what that entails, but it varies based on the event.
Our city administrator informed me that the line category of residential block party of 1 block or less in residential districts is not.
Yeah, that was made for you when we first started talking about this. I was instructed to put that in there.
But
So
that's not currently
that's
adopted.
not currently. No, it's not currently adopted.
So
that part
the
of it.
recommendation I would have is that we adopt that at a minimum and then maybe drop the application fee down to 25. That way it's fair to everyone. You know, if you're doing a block party or just an application fee, it's only $25. I think Mr. Barnett was first.
Sounds good to me.
I'm respectful to the work that goes into processing the applications and such, but there's also a cost for goodwill in our community. There's also a cost of events not taking place. There's also a cost what these events do for the city in a positive manner, bringing in tourists that benefit businesses downtown, that benefit restaurants downtown, that build our economic status up when we have all these events happening and people coming in from even the surrounding towns help us out. There's a cost, yes, to processing some applications, but there's also a cost to losing events that bring in tourism and goodwill in the community. Like I said, I really don't want to live in a city where they say, you know, remember when this used to happen, and the city snuffed it because there was no goodwill. That's how I'm seeing it. It's my opinion. I know there's lots of people that disagree with me, and I respect that, but that's how I see it. I think that the city got along fine before that fee schedule, and it'll get fine without it. So I'm standing where I am with my thoughts on it.
So are you suggesting just to remove the $100 application fee, or?
I would be okay with a very minimum application fee, but to charge events, non-for-profits, money for every little thing that has to happen to make an event happen is ludicrous, and it's counterproductive to what the city of Rhinelander should stand for, and that's a community, a city that gets behind and supports non-for-profits that are doing a lot of good in this community.
Could I ask another question?
Sure, Mr. Anderson.
The ones involving fireworks, could we hear from the fire chief what's
So I believe what his question was for a fire chief to ask what goes into those permits for the firework permits. To my understanding, besides the city fireworks, we have Lights of the Northwoods do a fireworks show. I'm not sure if there's anyone else currently.
Yeah, that's the only two that I've seen come through. But that's just, they have to be licensed and carry a liability insurance along with them. We usually man it by our people that are on duty, and if we do have to call on other personnel, then it's an overtime cost to us, but we eat it within our budget.
Was there any follow-up questions, Mr. Anderson?
not on the application fee. Application fee be reduced to $25. So, I got a new phone that works different from my in any way. To reduce the application fee is $25 from 100.
So, Ms. Anderson, if you could just repeat, if one, that's a motion you're making, and two, what the actual motion is due to poor connection?
I move that the $100 application fee be reduced to $25. Were you able to hear all that?
Second.
Okay, motion by Anderson, second by Holt. Any discussion on the motion?
Does it,
Oh, Mr. Barnett.
does this end the discussion on all of it? I mean, there's a lot going on here that's still,
Yeah.
because, I mean, that's one of many parts of this. I mean, it's,
There's a motion just to amend, you can amend this fee schedule 5,000 times if you want to. This is only amending one section of the fee schedule, and you're just saying you're amending it from $100 down to, I think he said 25. And it was seconded.
To
But
clarify,
now, that's the only thing that's on the table right now, so that's the only discussion.
to clarify,
Yes.
that after we vote on that, we can continue in this meeting to discuss the fee schedule.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Not seeing any other discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, abstain. Okay, with that, the motion for the application fee to be dropped down to
Aye.
25 is approved. Anyone else would like to make a motion or have the floor? Mr. Jopek?
So I'm kind of just looking at this. So moving forward, we either just leave this as is after that amendment, or is there something else that we're pursuing in this?
So the $25 for a block party isn't actually in here, but if we're making an application fee $25, I don't know if we need to add that since it's the same dollar amount. So pretty much the only thing that currently has changed from what it's currently in policy is the $100 application fee would be dropped down to 25. So if you would like to change or modify anything else, this kind of would be that moment.
And so I'm just making sure there is, at the top, it says residential block party, 1 block or less, only in residentially zoned districts, $25.
So that is not in the current policy, that was added on
Okay,
as recommendation.
okay.
So that line item is just not there. And then the motion that got approved was the application fee to be only 25.
So at the moment, if we were to approve what's in here, it'd be like $50. Because it'd be 25 for the application, 25 for the block party, correct?
No, my understanding would just be 25.
Yeah, it'd just be 25.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so a block party as of today technically would be $25 since that motion passed.
Okay. Just kind of keeping it out in the open and kind of talking through it. I think the principle and what I'm kind of struggling with here, where I stand, honestly, is just trying to figure out what city resources are used, how they're used, and what costs the city is facing. As always, I'm that guy who's just saying like, hey, let's make sure we're managing the little funds right, I guess. And I'm all for not nickel and diming anybody. Like I'm not advocating for that. The one principle that I'm kind of struggling with here is that the road in question for like in the case of Wisconsin Avenue, it is a public road that's being shut down. Can people still drive through that if it's shut down?
No.
And so if we're shutting down a road for a block party, which I'm all for. I mean, I participated in them as a kid all the time. But then we're denying that to other members of the community at no cost and actually a cost to the city. Because we're processing application fees, people are dropping off the barricades or whatever, unless there is none. Okay, I don't know. And so I guess that's my concern there is that we're shutting off a road that at no cost, really. And that's not to say I'm against that. I'm trying to process, is that the appropriate method? Is that the appropriate route? Or is $25 or whatever we end up at appropriate fee to just kind of cover the cost on Austin's end, the different departments, and dropping that off for because it's a private event. I show up to that event, it's kind of awkward, right? So I don't live on Wisconsin Avenue. And so at that point, should there be some cost put into it? Not saying I believe that, just raising the concern, that's all.
So in that specific example, minus Austin's time, who is salaried, so unless he's occurring overtime based on application fees, it's already baked into the budget through duties. If they pick up their own barricades and return them, the really only cost to the city would be is if there was an emergency where police or fire would have to, enter that area, that would be a delayed response time and possibly more effort to get there. Besides that, there's really no other cost to the city for a block party of that scale, so.
Okay, and so then that block party's good, and then the main streets kind of thing, that's where it gets maybe a little bit more dicey. The cost might look somewhat different. And I think that's what I'm just trying to delineate. I think we're trying to cover a lot of things. And there's, a small family block party to me is not the same as the Hodag reunion, right? That's a much bigger event. And so I'm sitting here trying to come to terms with both. And so I'm sorry for, delaying the meeting more. I'm fine where it's at. Even a small block party, I asked, what's the ordinance look like on people meeting and not shutting down the road at all and just hanging out on Wisconsin Avenue. Like back in the day, we'd play football on the street, right, on a back road, and then you just move out of the way when a car came. I don't know what the extent of this party is, so I'm struggling on that end, but I appreciate it.
Mr. Barnett?
I want to see, before we end this tonight, the verbiage in there that Eileen presented, that non-for-profits, 501c3s, what have you, have a right to come before council to have the fees waived. And I even like the idea that if nothing has changed from the previous years, and the fees have been waived in the past, that it can just be an automatic fee waive, provided nothing has changed. And I would be okay with that at this point.
So just so I understand what's being said, you would like us to come back with an amendment to the fee schedule which would really be an amendment to the ordinance that would have a provision in the ordinance that said that fees may be waived under this schedule for nonprofit organizations by petitioning the council for a waiver, and that if the council does grant waiver, that waiver shall be continual until such time as the council takes further action. Is that what I hear you asking us to put together and bring back to you?
Yes, provided that the event has not changed. Let's say the all-class reunion, you know, they shut down Brown Street, and it's been like that every year for a long time. But let's say next year they want to close down an extra street. Well, now things have changed.
Okay, I'm going to repeat myself then, just so there's some understanding. So you want the administration to go put together a proposed ordinance a proposed amendment to the ordinance that would provide that nonprofit 501(c)(3)s can come before the council to ask for a waiver of fees, and that if that waiver is granted, that waiver shall remain in place until such time as it's determined there has been a change in the activity such that the clerk in this case would request that it be brought back before the council.
Sounds like a good motion to me.
And I would add one caveat that that same verbiage would be on the application itself, because I know as a small event coordinator, I don't look at this schedule ever.
I don't think anybody does.
No, so I think having it on the actual application has a value.
I agree.
Yeah, and I just want everyone in the council to know, we're going to write this up. So between now and the next meeting, if you want to clarify more things, we'll try to get it out in advance, because it's amendment to an ordinance, and so you really need to have the two readings anyway. It's not something you should really be changing from 25 or 100 to 25. That I don't have any problem with that, but changing a whole concept of an ordinance, I think that you really need to have the public aware of that, and it should be on the agenda for the next meeting. As your city attorney, that's what I'm recommending.
Yeah, I make a motion to have Mr. Sorensen and Patrick write up the changes to the ordinance to be presented to the council at the next meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Mikulowski, second.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion on said motion?
Can you hear me?
Yes, so just to let you know, Mr. Anderson, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Just we're looking for discussion on said motion.
I would say I am now in favor of the first half of that motion. I'm still not in favor of the automatic renewal idea. And I would add, does that suggest the process going? Well, if you can still hear me, I'd also like to have staff come back and give us a more rational system for the street opening and closing parts.
If you
I know
could,
that's not on the motion, but
yeah, Mr. Anderson, if you could email your request to Patrick, the city administrator, that way we know what you're asking. So with that, all those in favor of the...
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone abstain? Opposed? Nope. Motion passes. Anything else on this topic? Okay. Moving on to 12A.
And again, I want clarity. That means we're not changing any more of the fees. That you, by not taking any further action on the fee schedule does remain as it is. And we're going to bring that motion or that ordinance change, because that's an ordinance change. It's not a number change. Okay, just so that's clear for everybody.
Okay. Moving on to 12A, discuss and/or action of common council meeting minutes from September 11th.
Holt, I will make a motion to approve. Actually, I can't make that motion. I wasn't here on September 11th.
You can make
I
the
can
motion.
make a motion? Okay. I will make a motion to approve the common council meeting minutes for September 11th, 2023.
Daniel, second.
Any discussion? Not seeing. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Minutes are approved. Moving on to 12B, discuss and/or action of mayor. Thank you. Discuss all approved. So 12B, discuss and/or action of approving mayoral appointments to ad hoc committee for the golf course. My understanding, Mr. Pat, this was all the people that showed interest in said committee?
Yes, this is what I got, applications or emails or communication through conversation with somebody.
So
I had other emails that were nominating various people, but none of those people came forward. It was just these people that came forward.
So when all these people are involved with the golf course, besides, well, yourself probably is the least involved, but you are the city administrator who oversees it, so.
Yeah, but every one of these folks has stated that they are interested in serving.
So, Mr. Barnett?
In what form are they associated with the golf course?
Various. Some are just interested. Some are pretty normal or avid players out there. Everybody seems to have a different kind of spin on it.
So there's a good mixture?
I think so.
Okay.
Mr. Holt?
Yeah, just for broader clarification for the public, what are the parameters of this ad hoc golf course committee in terms of its function, and whether it's an advisory committee and whom it advises, just to get just to have it spoken on the record, for people who might not know.
True. So it is an advisory committee only, so it's advising administration. So that would be Patrick, myself, and Steve if it team fit based on where it goes. At this point, it's more of just a source for them to tell us how they feel about the golf course, possible ways to improve it, possible ways that we can make it more effective and expand its services. At least that's what I see. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, they would be coming back to you with recommendations. Is how I see it. They'd be coming back to the council.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to ask that?
Sure. Will we get some sort of written document that outlines this advisory committee's duties and the scope of their charter? I don't know. It's not a charter. It's an ad hoc committee. So, just some sort of document that outlines and puts forth the scope of this committee's responsibilities. That's all I'm looking for.
Absolutely, and I don't look at this as a policy-making committee. This is ad hoc. This is making recommendations. These folks are out there all the time. They see a lot of this. They see what goes on. I'd love to be out there all the time. God knows I would. I just can't. I can't be out there all the time. But these folks have a vested interest, and they want to see better things. So that's why it's interesting to me. And like I said, not looking at them as policy-making, but making recommendations.
Mr. Jopek?
Yeah, I'm kind of in with Ms. Daniel on this in the sense that I guess I'd like to see that verbiage as well, because even in an advisory capacity, we had no idea what was going on out there until a month ago, 2 months ago, and just like the craziness that was happening. I'll say craziness in the sense of whatever it is. And so I think just knowing who's on it and what their role is in advising would be just helpful for us in the sense of, we kind of got advised by a petition that showed up at public comment. And so I think seeing that in words and just, even if it's an ad hoc, I'd appreciate that personally.
I don't think that would be a problem whatsoever.
Mr. Barnett?
So are we suggesting this in lieu of having council have a work session to find out what's actually going on out there?
No. So a work session will only solve what's going on. It won't continue to grow or expand the golf course. So this is more of a living, breathing thing as, time goes on. They could address it more in this manner versus it being newspaper worthy every time it gets to this level. So.
Okay. So there's still in the future a work session where we can talk about what's going on out there.
I would think so. I would think that'd be a great idea, but it might be a good idea to take their recommendations, their viewpoints, and then incorporate that into a work session.
Okay.
Mr. Holt?
Yeah, before I make a motion here to approve the mayoral appointments, I wanted to ask if we actually need to verbally list the names out, because I can do that. Nope. All right. I will make a motion to approve the mayoral appointments to an ad hoc golf course committee.
Daniel, second.
Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing all those, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Gerald, how did you vote on that one?
Well, I guess I'll vote no. We have to define the committee first.
Okay, so I think you voted nay, but the motion still passes, so, okay.
We talked about, yes.
Okay, moving on to 12C, discuss and/or action proposed resolution 2023-104 regarding the issuance of 1.8 million in general obligation bonds. I refer to Wendy, our treasurer. Nope, I refer to Patrick, our city administrator.
Okay, great. Was there a no from there? So this is
that was a strong no.
This was to actually sell the bonds. This is to actually go forward selling these.
Holt, I will make a motion to approve authorizing resolution 2023-104, authorizing the issuance and sale of 1,830,000 general obligation promissory notes, series 2023A.
So does,
Daniel, second.
so there's a motion second. Refer to Wendy, our treasurer.
I just wanted to remind you that Sean Lentz is via Zoom to explain the borrowing.
Oh, perfect.
Take it away, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy and Patrick. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
I can.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I've got a brief presentation on the sale of the 2023 notes. If you wouldn't mind moving to the second page. Thank you. Just as a reminder for the council and those in attendance, this is the list of the projects included in this year's financing, and it was previously discussed with the council at the pre-sale meeting. If we can go to the next page. No need to reiterate the review that Wendy provided earlier on the agenda, but again, very good news for the city that their bond rating has increased from an A+ to a AA-. And this is a good reference or summary to the material that Wendy talked about in terms of why did we get the upgrade and what would we need to do in the future to see a further upgrade, and what actions could potentially lead to a downgrade. So we can go to the next slide, please. And back. Perfect. Yes, thank you. There we go, sale results. So we put out for competitive bid earlier today the general obligation promissory notes. We ended up receiving 4 bids, with the winning bid from TD Securities out of New York. With the higher rating, we also can get attention from bidders that maybe normally wouldn't bid on issues. The AA- rating attracts more attention. The combined interest rate was a little over 4.08%, with the bids coming in from 4.08 to 4.16. So fairly tight bidding, but the 4.08 from TD was the best bid. We talked with the council month and a half ago about the sale. And unfortunately, we have seen an increase in interest rates since that time. The pre-sale estimate was around 382. So the impact, net impact with the rates today, the best bid today versus what was in the pre-sale report, as a total net interest increase of about $30,000 or $3,000 a year. If you go to the next slide, there's a index that'll kind of show, yeah, thank you, that this is interest rates over the last 30 years. And so you can see where we're at currently around that 4% range. If you're looking at the far right side of this sheet, we've seen an increase over the last month and a half that has got the rates to the current level. But if you look at it over the historical term, over this 30-year term, the rate environment that we're in is still pretty attractive compared to where we've seen rates over the last 30 years. They're certainly not as low as they were in the early 2020s, but historically speaking, again, they're still in pretty solid condition. We can go to the next page. With the winning bid today, the original plan was, or estimate was, we would need $1,830,000 to fund the projects this year. That amount was reduced based on the bids received today to $1,810,000. And what would need to be approved by the council this evening is a resolution, and I believe that that was up on your screen before my presentation. The only change is that it's no longer $1,830,000, it's $1,810,000. And the plan would be for the closing to occur in October 26th, and that would be the funding date where the city would receive the proceeds of the issue. We would recommend approval of the winning bid from TD Securities at that 4.08% level. I would mention one last thing to the council before taking any questions that you might have. We did see TD Securities bid on another sale today, which had a rating of A+, which is the city's former rating. Their bid on that was around 430. So you can see the difference of having that better bond rating to the AA- level from the A+ level with those two bids. This one at 4.08 and the bid for the A+ is around 430. So again, that's the benefit of getting that better bond rating is all other things equal, lower interest rates and lower costs for the city. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you and the council for any questions before action on the resolution.
Mr. Jopek?
In the slides, it showed that the splash pad was at the top, and I know based on our recent conversations, the splash pad is kind of, I'm not saying it's not happening, it's just the timeline is a bit more in question than it was because of, well issues and just general planning. Does that change this at all with it being at the top there?
No, so that's just kind of placeholders. So every
Right.
time we'd bring a project back, it would go for council's approval.
Okay.
So depending, I don't know why it's first. I don't know if it's an alphabetical thing or what have you, but it's just kind of a placeholder at this point.
Okay, and so we're not mandated or required or anything, spend that money or anything within a certain time frame if we don't have it it's not in the cards at the moment.
Not to my knowledge, but I believe Wendy might know more.
The other thing I wanted to point out about this borrowing is it's through notes and not bonds. So we have a little more flexibility that we might find a different purpose for that $150,000, but we will want to spend it down within 3 years.
Yeah, that kind of got to it, just making sure that we didn't have obligated funds out there that we don't execute and then run into issues. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, with that, Mr. Holt, are you okay? You're changing your motion to $1,810,000?
Yes.
Ms. Daniel, are you okay with your second changing?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is, for the sale of the bonds of $1,810,000. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Tom Kelly. Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Karen Mikulowski.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to D, discuss and/or action proposed resolution 2023-105. So it sounds like this person wants to be able to dump some product into our waste collection system to be treated.
That's kind of a simple way of putting it, but yeah, that's pretty much right on there. Lake State Yeast, Nathan is out here tonight, and he's the plant manager out there. Basically, they would like to start discharging from time to time into our system. There was a memo from Kurt Johnson, the wastewater foreman. He is fine with it. He is good with it. Per ordinance, this has to come to you.
So be similar to like the qualified haulers that dump at the plant themselves, I'm assuming. So,
Similar, but yeah, it's basically to allow them to start doing industrial discharges. And like I said, the wastewater treatment plant folks are very happy with the route we're going to go with it.
Ms. Daniel?
Is this a bring to the plant and dump, or is this just putting it into our regular wastewater system?
Right into the system.
Is this a company who has been in the city for a while? Or is this new?
Correct.
That would.
It's right next to the mill? Okay.
Nathan could probably tell you a little bit more, so.
I'm just
Sorry-
wondering
sorry
where
to
they're
drag
putting
up
it
there,
now.
Nathan.
So where's it been going for?
They bring it to the paper mill right now.
Hello, I'm Nate. Nate Rudis. I'm the plant manager at Lake States. The mill owned our business till 2009. It's been here since the 60s. In 2015 or 16, we paid $300,000 to tie in to when Tom Eamon was, or not Tom, but Tom Kingman, sorry. But we've never gone through with it actually. The paper mill's had issues this year with their treatment plan, which is why we're looked and reached out to Kurt and Patrick about going with this. We're a pretty small plant. We have 25 people that we employ here. We're union, pretty high-paying jobs for Rhinelander. When the mill shuts down, we have to shut down, so it's costly for us.
And not to make Nate appreciate it, not to make him stand up here anymore, but if you want to hear about cool things that are going on, I didn't know anything about a yeast plant, but it's pretty cool. We got a tour of the place, so it's good. It's good to ask him afterwards.
And for sure, and you've said that the wastewater treatment plant foreman is completely fine with this. He's looked at the discharge, the composition of it, understands that the filtration systems we have in place are going to filter out anything bad. Okay.
Absolutely, and there was a memo.
checking.
Yeah, there was a memo included in your packet from Kurt. So
Yeah, I got to go all the way to page 50. So I'll make a motion to approve proposed resolution 2023-105, approving an application for industrial wastewater discharge from Lake State Yeast.
Hold second.
Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing. All those, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Abstain? Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to 12E, discuss and/or action approving of resolution 2023-106. Refer to Mr. Pat.
So each year, our employees, our full-time employees, have to go through an open enrollment process for our health insurance. It's a time-consuming process for both the employee and for Rachel and Wendy to go through this. Rachel and Wendy found that Civic Systems, who currently does the MyPay, the MyViewpoint, all of our software systems, they have something that can streamline this. And it's open enrollment software from them for $3,600. So that's what we bring you tonight, and hopefully this will cut out some worker time here so we can focus on other things.
Barnett, I make a motion to accept resolution 2023-106, approving the purchase of open enrollment software from Civic Systems for the sum of $3,600.
Daniel, second.
The only question I would have is what's your funding source?
I believe we were going to use the 2021 borrowing on this. I believe it says it in the resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Any discussions on the motion? Not seeing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I believe we have to take a roll call because of
Oh,
dollars.
yeah, it's a dollar amount. Thank you. Clerk, please take the roll call.
David Holt.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson. Aye. Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Aye.
Terry Michalowski,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Okay, I think everyone besides Tom Kelly, who's not in attendance, said aye. Moving on to 12F, which is discuss and/or approve the sale of the city billboard. I'll refer to you, Mr. Pat.
Justin Ernst, our streets foreman, had him go out and brush in front of the billboard, went out and inspected it. It's in pretty good condition. You had all said that you wanted to sell it. So I'm really kind of wondering what process you'd like to move forward with. I would suggest something like, selling the billboard and then having a monthly lease. Thinking maybe a minimum bid starting would be $4,000 for the sale of the billboard and $100 per month lease. Get some sealed bids in and go from there.
Mr. Jopek?
Just for the point of the record, so the $4,000 they'd buy the billboard, the $100 would be because it's on our property.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, just.
Mr. Barnett?
I would be fine with that. I mean, $4,000, at least we're getting, because that's what we paid for it, right?
believe so, yes.
So break even on that, plus we're gaining the $100 a month on the lease. I mean, I don't see anybody paying more than that for the billboard in its position. So, yeah, I say, do you have an idea of where you would post that it's for sale?
I'd love to use the billboard, but we'll put it on we would put it on the city's website, get a blast out there, Facebook, and send it out to folks that normally do these kind of things.
Mr. Holt?
Yeah. Was there a prior lease agreement? Was the city receiving a monthly amount prior to?
I don't know if Wendy
I wasn't
could,
here. Wendy might be able to answer that. I wasn't here for it.
Yes, there was a prior lease amount that we were collecting, but no, I do not believe that it was monthly. I think it was an annual lease fee. And I'd have to double check the number, but $100 per year sounds closer than $100 per month.
Just for clarification, it sounds like it was like $100 a year. Like it was much less than the proposed $100 a month. Okay.
Ms. Daniel?
Do we have a plan in place to write this off if we can't move this albatross?
I'm moving forward with the fact that we can. So I haven't come up with a plan for anything. I'm hope springing eternal optimism. I haven't, but I'd be open to ideas on this.
Mr. Holt?
Well, my concern is if the prior agreement was annual and that it was far less than what $100 a month would be, which is $1,200 a year. It sounds like it was less than 10% of that. Maybe I just want to make sure that the more important thing for me is to recoup the $4,000. You mentioned $100. Is there a reason? Is there some logic that came from?
It came from me because I've got several clients that are in the billboard business that own the land and they lease the land to a billboard company. That's pretty much the minimum, $1,200 a year. Now, if you have a lease that's 25 years old, you might, and if you have a relationship between the company that's putting the material on the billboard and the person that owns the billboard and the person that owns the land, which is oftentimes they know each other. In other words, I'm an LLC that owns land. I'm an LLC that owns billboards. I'm an LLC that advertises. I'm really the same person, but I got 3 different names. That distorts it to some degree. But I think that, that the $100, again, it came from me, is a good way to get that number out there. And if somebody wants to say, no, I want to pay $50, at least you're going to get it out there. And it's not unreasonable. It is not unreasonable. I've got some places along Highway 41, Interstate 41, that pay $1,000, a month.
Yeah.
But they got nicer billboards.
And a higher traffic count would be my guess.
Yeah.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah, I think that the $100 a month for marketing and having utilized business to be a benefit to it. Obviously, we want to recoup the $4,000, but there's always room to adjust the lease fee. If no one's buying it into it for $100, then we drop it down to 50, and so on and so forth. So I would like to know everything that was involved with the billboard in the past, to make sure we're not stepping on something that we shouldn't be, or missing something. If Wendy can provide what past leases were and all such. But I don't see a problem moving forward with raising the lease price, especially if that original lease price was done like 25, 30 years ago. So I make a motion to direct Patrick to move ahead with putting a ad out for the billboard in the sum of $4,000 and $100 per month lease.
Hold second.
Okay, there's a motion second. Any discussion on the motion? Not seen. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Tom Kelly. Gerald Anderson. Gerald.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Carrie Michalowski.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to 12G. Discussion and or action of proposed footpath on Phillip Street to West Hill. One of the residents gave you a handout. Pretty much it's city-owned property that we do have utilities underneath there. So there was some discussion last year before the changing of some staff about, do we clear the trees on top of the utilities due to trees growing on utilities are probably not the best way of keeping utilities functioning, as well as what to do with it. I think it did come to council. I don't know, Steve, if you recall. I don't remember the outcome for when it did come to council to discuss a little bit.
Yeah, it came to council, and it basically was decided that the administration would look into it. Nothing ever came beyond that, that I recall. I know that we talked about it, and I know that the biggest thing that we did is we verified that we really do own the land and what we do own. That we did do.
So and now we're here. Ms. Daniel?
I do remember back when this first came to council, I received an email, but I'm sure other council members did it as well, from one of the residents at the end of that street, Ben, and their concern was that that path was going to be going like within, 8 feet, 5 feet of one of their main big windows. And they were concerned with just the general public walking by and looking in their house. So, I can totally understand that. They didn't want to give up their natural light and put up curtains, that kind of thing. They purchased that house at that location with the understanding that it is kind of secluded. You are at the end of on a dead end. You pay a little bit more for something like that. Can you tell me, this map here doesn't show the houses and the property line? Oh, it does. Oh, good. Look, there's one up there. So if you could kind of walk us through where the path runs in relation to the houses in the area.
Certainly. So if you look at the parcel labeled RH3473, that is where the Ewings family live, Renee Ewings, and she is, I think, probably one of the people or the person that contacted council, if I remember correctly. The strip just to the north of that parcel, right now it says 165 feet there. That's just a measurement. You see that narrow strip just to the north of that. That is city-owned property. The big parcel, 3560 to the east of that, where you see what looks like a wetland, and partially it is. That is also city-owned property. So, my suggestion here is for the path to go from the end of West Hill Road, the far north end, dead end of West Hill Road, on the narrow strip of city property. Yep, the person who's doing the cursor is doing it correctly. Thank you. And then on the very north side of that, 3560 to connect with the corner of Phillip and Lois Street. I walked this today. I think the suggestion that the property line is within 5 to 8 feet of their house is probably, I think it's a little more than that. Not a surveyor, not an engineer. I don't foresee a situation, if I were walking this path, that I would be able to look in their window and watch them getting dressed. I mean, let me put it that way. I have not tried. Does that answer your question? It does. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Barnett?
Do we know how wide that path is?
30 feet.
30 feet, so reasonably, if someone was concerned about privacy, our city forester could absolutely put some foliage along that path to...
then you get back to the utilities being underneath it.
Underneath.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's part of the reason why that parcel exists, is I believe that's how the water gets to that subdivision from Phillip and Lois intersection. So the trees is doable, but I don't know the depth and other stuff.
Well, that would be, all right, so that would be one thing to look into to see if that's even doable. The other would be, would it be feasible to make this walking path a more of a beautifying thing for the city and its residents? Could we make the path with high walls on either side? I'm just throwing ideas out there as ways to help them with their privacy issues, but ultimately it is city land, and there is a need and a want by many residents out there. And
well, I have no problem to be kind of the mean guy in the room. One, they could put up a fence, just like everyone else on their property. And two, and this happens quite often, I think we all have done this or seen this multiple times. Looks like they're using part of our right-of-way in our property for their backyard. Now, granted, that has been unused by the city for years, so I mean, it happens all over the city. We see it from people putting in sidewalks to gardens to what have you. So I think that's part of that, is from their point of view, this has always been their backyard, and the city might be taking away some of their perceived backyard for a bike trail, which I could understand. I mean, if I was that property owner, I would be just as upset, probably more, but it's still, I mean, I don't know, Steve, what would be the way to put it? Not their property?
Yeah, and understand that you cannot take municipal property through adverse possession. The statutes in Wisconsin are very clear that a municipality cannot give up its ownership of property by allowing someone else or adversely allowing somebody else to use the property.
True.
Yeah, it's right now, in fact, people can walk on this anytime they want. There's no prohibition in the city. So people could be walking back and forth on that property right now, and that wouldn't be a violation of any kind.
So I believe Mr. Holt was first.
Yeah, so last year when this came out, that owner invited me out to walk that property to look at it. You are correct, Mr. Mayor, that they mowed into that property, and so when you look at it, it's deceiving, right? Where their property line is, and he acknowledged that he had mowed past the property line. About halfway through that, if memory serves, it's an embankment that goes down, and so part of that property that is city property is significantly lower. Again, I'm not an engineer, For future reference, by the way, the east side of West Hill is District 3, so Carrie, that's your district, not mine. I got a bunch of calls. But so the entire project would be in District 3, just to clarify. Send the calls to her. No, I'm more than happy to take them as well. I mean, a lot of my constituents feel cut off, and I drive West Davenport almost daily, and it is not ideal. And I agree with that. I do acknowledge the difficult circumstance for being a property owner, and then and the perception being off when on where that property line actually was. Yeah, I don't know what could be built there in terms of privacy. Living on a city lot in town, I mean, I sympathize. Yet, we live close to each other. So I would be. I mean, I certainly would be in favor of utilizing that. For in terms of the number of constituents, the connection, and the fact that Davenport, there's so many problems with getting adequate walking and biking along West Davenport, between it being partly Crescent, partly the city, partly Oneida County, partly when you get closer to 47 DOT. There's so many entities that are conflating that challenge. But that's my recollection.
Well, I might as well turn it over to Carrie, who district it is.
It is. So first of all, I just want to say anybody walking past my house could definitely look in my windows from the sidewalk. So in that regard, that's just part of living in the city. I would just like to know what the cost would be to make the trail. I know we had talked about getting lighting out there so that in the evening it's not, I mean, it's lit and it's more, it's safer in that regard, having it lit. So I guess I would like to know what the cost would be. I don't necessarily think it needs to be like blacktopped or anything like that. I think a gravel of sort walking trail would be just fine. But I do think that it does need to occur. So I'm all in favor of this. Again, with what David was saying, Davenport Street is extremely dangerous to be walking on it, let alone having walking littles with you, and the cars go relatively fast down there, even though, they're only supposed to go 25. They don't. So I do think that this is a need, and welcome anybody who thinks differently to contact me.
Ms. Daniel?
Can we get a surveyor out there to mark the property line so the property owner is well aware of where their property line is, and what they're responsible for? And I mean, if we can claim land just by mowing it, I mean, have a lawnmower, we'll travel. But I do think we need to go out, have a surveyor come out, mark the property line so that they're well aware of, this is your property line. This is where the trail is going to start. So, because it looks, if I'm looking at it correctly, there's going to be a good 20 to 25 feet between the that side of their house and the edge of the path. Would you say that's about right, Ben?
Yeah,
I'm no good with measurements, though. So.
Sorry, yeah, that's a rough
point
estimation.
Of order. I'm sorry. A point of order. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, no.
But
please.
In terms of a point of order for fairness in public comment and public participation, the mayor and council would have to recognize you. Just standing at the podium, surreptitiously getting up there doesn't grant you speaking rights. And I'm not trying to bust on you. I'm just policy procedure guy.
If you prefer I sit down, I can do that.
Ben, I yield your time.
Thank you, Mayor. To answer Alderwoman Daniels' question,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about right. My estimate would be that about 20 feet of buffer between a potential trail and that home is in the ballpark.
Mr. Jopek?
I think personally I've kind of heard enough to, not necessarily, I don't know if emotion is necessary, but I do feel that what we're trying to do is on the up and up. I don't think anybody here is trying to, ruin anybody's day. We own the land. It sounds like there's space where there'll be distance between the house and there, but we're also trying to benefit the greater good here. And so I know it's not necessarily optimal for some, but I do think that we all are well-intentioned. I think, as Carrie mentioned, we do need to do kind of a cost estimate. The utilities kind of thing needs to be addressed. But I don't think anyone here is trying to harm anybody else's privacy. I live right in town, and I have maybe like 10 feet from my front door to the sidewalk. And I understand you buy a dead-end road, I get it, but at the same time, it's a dead-end road next to city property where we have people who are trying to get to and from parts of town, and we're also trying to be more walkable and be more approachable for bike riders, anybody. And so for me, this is I don't want to say a no-brainer, but I do think that we are with the right intent. I don't really see us as trying to ruin somebody's day or anything. And so I'm firmly in favor of going forward with what Ms. Mikulowski said in trying to figure out a cost estimate and what that's going to look like. I'm also for what Eileen said about just making sure we mark that line to make it absolutely clear, like what the survey says.
So, Mr. Barnett?
Barnett, I make a motion to direct Patrick to find a surveyor to mark off our property so that we know exactly where that is. I would also like to see ideas and thoughts on what a path could look like with cost with that. Have that ready by the second meeting of October of the Common Council.
How do you plan on funding that?
Hold second, and to answer that question, because I was going to add that to my second. I believe that there are several possibilities. I am not a city administrator, so I don't want to step on Patrick's toes, but I have full faith and confidence that he will find those several options, possibly, Pratt tax, or, it is infrastructure, it is, tourism, it is a lot of avenues there.
If I may. So the question that I have, and Ben, maybe you can help me with this because I have not walked this. So I see that pond out there on our property to the right of the house there. Is there a slope that goes down at that point, or is it an embankment? I have not walked it, so.
I'll wait to be recognized by the mayor.
Sure.
Thank you. I want to make sure I'm not stepping on toes. The area, roughly, the area in the strip, in the narrow strip that you see mowed is high ground, no problem. The area on the other larger piece of city property that's near that, I don't know that I would call it a pond. It's a wetland with vegetation. It is the slope between what is more solid ground and that wetland is a fairly shallow gradient, so it's not as though there's a drop off that goes down to the water. Like I mentioned earlier, not being a hydrologist, I don't know where the wetland ends technically by statute and where the ground begins, if you will. Where that cursor is low-lying territory, but like I said, I was out there today, and I expected to be squishing through mud and spongy stuff in my boots, and I wasn't. I mean, it's not high above the level of that wetland, but it's not. I wouldn't think it's a wetland itself. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what I would go with further is you got to be real careful around those wetlands. You don't know what's protected, you don't know what's what. I'm not a hydrologist either, nor an engineer. So I would almost think, getting a survey done, that's not difficult. We can do that. You just gotta find a surveyor, come out and do it. But after that, that might be something we'd wanna look at town and country engineering for helping us, even though it seems pretty simple. It's the devil is in the details, and that's something that could go sideways.
I got a question for you, Steve. So with utility easements, isn't it usually the utility is in the dead center of the easement?
No. That's where you'd like to have it, but I can't possibly say that that's usually where it is. No, I can't tell you that as a rule. What I would tell you is I bet you there's survey posts out there already because it is a utility. Plus, we can locate our utility. See, this is the thing you gotta we can locate where our utility is, and we have maps already that will tell us where the utility sits on our easement. So it's not gonna be very difficult for a surveyor, even one of our own public works crew, to go out there and mark our land for the purposes of knowing where it's at. Wetland delineation, if you have a surveyor from this area, he'll or she'll, because there's a couple women up here that do it, will give you really good wetland delineation so that it won't work. You might need an engineering firm if you're going to actually try to take something out of the wetland, but if you're just trying to identify the potential of wetland, and wetland delineation only means you can't build on it. It doesn't mean you can't walk on it, you can't go through it. So I don't see that as a real issue.
But thank you. You kind of answered the question I was going after of if we could locate our utility, we don't have to hire an independent company to survey the land when we may not potentially do anything with said land.
For the purposes of what you're trying to do tonight, I would just send our crew out there to locate our utilities and look at our utility maps that we already have. And even Mark could tell you that if he's still here, I don't know. But I would say that's correct.
Okay, I think Ms. Daniel was first.
My one question this time is this something that's going to need to be maintained over the winter? Meaning, are residents going to expect to want to use it during the winter months? In which case, it would have to be somehow cleared, and that could get spendy.
So, well, that's a whole another discussion, I suppose. As far as it being only gravel, it would be a lot easier if it was blacktop or concrete, which makes a different burden for creating it. I suppose we could do it in phases. Access 3/4 of the year is better than no access, and then maybe in the future expand it to a blacktop trail. So, Mr. Barnett?
Just to be clear with my motion, I wasn't asking Patrick to go out and put out bids for ideas on how. I'm talking about utilizing city people. Talk to Tom Giroux, find out if it's feasible to put trees in there, or find out, because of the underground. My other question was, I'm not an electrician or anything like that by any means. Doesn't all that water affect underground utilities there? What utilities are we talking about?
Sewer, waste.
Oh, sewer and waste. Oh, so that wouldn't even matter. I'm thinking electrical stuff. Yeah, I just want to see what our Parks Department or what have you, maybe they would have some ideas on how, because they work on trails all the time. So, I would love to hear some ideas coming from the different departments on how to make this work.
Okay, anyone else want to talk about anything before we take a roll call?
Can you just?
I need a second though.
Can you repeat the motion? Just to,
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Can I just hear the motion just as a refresher?
I make a motion to have Patrick work with city employees to come up with some ideas to present to council on the second meeting in October about how to make this happen.
Okay, but we already have a motion on the floor, so Austin, if you
He's clarifying his motion.
Yeah.
True.
And I seconded it.
So you agree to the second of the clarification?
I do.
Okay, so that's now the motion on the floor. Any discussion on that? Okay, not seeing any. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Tom Kelly. Carrie Mikulowski.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to 12H, discuss and/or action department heads attending common council meeting. Mr. Barnett, I refer to you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I would just, back when I first got on city council, we, during the time of the month where the department heads would submit their reports, thank you. The reports, they would all pretty much be here in case we had questions. Lately, I've had questions regarding department reports, but no one's been here to really answer the questions. So I'm just wondering if my fellow alder people feel the same, and would it be prudent to have the department heads start attending the meetings again so that we can actually have a conversation with them, if need be?
So since they're your staff, Patrick, I don't know what your thoughts are.
My only concern with it is, and I see exactly where Mr. Barnett's coming from, but my only concern is, they put in a lot of hours. I realize they signed up for it, but, there was an old community, former community I worked in. The mayor said something to me when I first started as city manager. He said, Patrick, he goes, you have 100 employees, we have one, and we expect it from you. So, go any way you'd like, but the reason you normally hire an administrator is you ask the questions. If I don't have them, I get the answers for you. So we can do it however we like. It's just, I've got some employees that live 45 minutes away, and there's that work-life balance that I want them to be able to continue, and that's pretty important because I've watched people get burned out trying to work too much.
Mr. Jopek?
Just kind of speaking to Tom, as far as what he's thinking about, as far as right now on the agenda, it just says department head attendance at common council meetings. Are we just referring to common council meetings where reports are submitted once a month? And then, I guess part of me is like, yes, because I like putting faces to names. I like to be able to communicate and say hi and meet people if I haven't met them before. Raising 3 children and all that stuff is kind of nuts for me. But at the same time, I think if I saw something like this, because I understand the work-life balance, and I'm not looking to put more on city employees' plates, if this were to happen, I think just making sure that in our agenda, it's the first thing that we cover every common council meeting, that they are there, so that if they need to go, they can go, and there's no judgment there. Again, I think working in a city, I think it's nice to see them, and I definitely see that where if there are questions that we do have, I definitely see the work-life balance. So I think trying to find maybe a little middle ground. Yeah, I guess that's kind of my viewpoint. It's just making sure it's just the reporting meeting and not all the others. And then on top of that we make sure we prioritize that first whenever they are expected, if that's what it comes to.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah, I understand where Patrick is coming from. I hadn't really thought of that aspect of it, so thank you for bringing that up. But I just remember that, like I said, a couple of years ago, they were present, even with the administrator here, and they were able to answer questions to their own reports that they're submitting. Not that I have any less faith in you, good sir, to answer those questions. I thought there was a more personal touch to it between the department heads and council. And that was my reasoning for bringing the subject up, was to gauge where my fellow alderpersons are on this. And if we're good the way we are, I'm good. I'm looking for other alder people to say where they stand on it.
I believe Mr. Holt.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand and see Stephen's point of view and Patrick's as well. The one thing I would add, I do fondly remember having the reports delivered and by face to face, oftentimes prior to the plague.
But one thing that might be a good option to consider is, and I feel like I've mentioned this before as a possibility, if alder folk would make a request, right? So instead of all department heads showing up, department heads showing up if there's something for them to report. I don't know if I want to force Carrie Bladern to be here through the cold months. You know, if there's nothing going on at the Pioneer Park Historical Complex, or no questions from us about it. But so I would think that would be a possible caveat.
Well, and I mean, I don't want to speak for you or your staff, Patrick, but hypothetically, they get their packets on Friday. If they have a question and email the department head over the weekend, would that department head probably be open to attending?
I would think so, unless they're taking some type of day off, but they could also respond via email. So the only issue you're going to run into there is if somebody doesn't know they're going to be there. You know, if they have a doctor's appointment or something that they have to make, and now they're waiting. So I realize that's part of the gig, but you know, again, it's the work-life balance.
I'm going to raise an issue just because I don't want it to become an issue. It's much, much better that any questions you have a department head go through the administrator, not go directly, because that starts opening the door for potential, you know, open records. And don't do that, please. If you have a question for one of the department heads, please go through the administrator, or if you can't get him, myself, because we can protect when protection needs to be done. And you don't want this accusation that there's something going on between an alder person and one of the staffers. That's why Patrick said earlier, you know, you all have one boss or one employee, and that's Patrick. But you really have two. You got myself too.
Well, with those insights, then I'm going to drop it. I'm good with the way things are. If this works out better for everybody, it was just a thought that I had because of what we were doing 2 years ago. But obviously things change, and that's okay. And I have full faith in Patrick. So yeah, those are very good points, and I appreciate the conversation.
Anyone else like to speak on this topic? Okay. Moving on to 13, future agenda items. Anything, Mr. Holt?
Yes. Skate park update has been on future agenda items for a very long time. I would like it to be bumped up to introduction of new business. I want to reiterate that the energy from the youth that started that project have now graduated from high school without seeing it come to fruition. And I think that we should recognize that. And I understand there was a lot of things that happened between 2019 and now, but I think that we owe it to our city's youth to acknowledge that they have waited a really long time, and it still hasn't really come to fruition. And they did a lot of work on it.
Anything else for future agenda items? Do we want to have a discussion about Zoom calls for meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll put that on future agenda items. Okay, with that, it is exactly 7:48 and 52, 53, 54, meeting adjourned.